What celeb gives you an off vibe? I absolutely guarantee that John Travolta has killed people. I've got no evidence to support that claim, but something tells me I'll be proven right. Not sure if this was a meme or actually real, but I remember reading once that his clearance level position in Scientology is such that should he ever kill someone, there would always be someone to hide the body, no questions asked. I think that was Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is high up there and probably has the benefit, but the walk away after murder part applies to John Travolta. Or at least that's what Leah Remini said in the Joe Rogan podcast. Sometimes I think the power Scientology is said to have in society seems overblown and unrealistic. Other times I think that's exactly what they'd want me to think if they really did have that kind of power. Leah Remini did a great podcast with Joe Rogan a while ago exposing the fuck out of Scientology. Pretty sure she touched on this. They get one kill. Jimmy Fallon. He just seems so fake and disingenuous. Like he's forcing himself to laugh at every little thing. I know that's his thing. And that he says he's such a big fan of all his guests. I think he might actually genuinely be that enthusiastic. Have you seen his sketches on SNL? I mean, sure he might have forced it then, but even if that was the case, you could still say it's impressive to keep that level of consistent enthusiasm for that long of a period. Yeah, that's what I always say when people say he laughs too hard, etc. I kind of thought so too, and then watched a bunch of SNL sketches from a while ago and was like, oh, it all makes sense now. I just think he's a guy that really loves what he does. And of course you can't say that you're not a big fan of someone you're having on your own show, but it's fine with me. I used to listen to his stand-up album, The Bathroom Wall, quite a bit in early high school. I had dreams of being on SNL throughout my entire childhood. In those bits he comes across, to me, as genuinely funny and having a blast doing it, and his impressions are on point. Honestly, if someone listens to that album, I think it's easy to see how he wound up on SNL, especially if you know their audition process. Whether or not he's good at his current job is another matter. I don't watch his show now, so I don't know. I think he might also have some kind of social anxiety that causes him to act so over the top and gregarious. It's gotta be exhausting for him. I think his is really like that also, that it is not fake. I don't think that necessarily makes him a bad person though, just not that competent at his job. The question is who gives an off vibe though. Fallon could be a decent person, but it doesn't take away from how disingenuous he comes off. Keanu Reeves. JK, that guy is awesome. We almost had a fight on our hands. Carrot Top has always freaked me out. He was freaky back in the 90s when he was starting out, and since he bulked up, now he looks even more freaky. He looks like he is mentally unstable. Edit. Just want to clarify, I don't think he is a bad guy or anything. He just looks and acts in a way I find very unsettling. He likes like a life-sized ripped Chucky doll. He faces scary too with all the plastic in it. Agree he looks nuts, but met him in line at airport years ago. He was incredibly friendly and offered my mom some Cinnabon he had bought. He gets a pass from me. My girlfriend and I ran into him waiting in a check stand line in Las Vegas. Can confirm he was a super nice guy who actually struck up a conversation with us. Always thought he should play a latent life joker. A few years ago, I was talking with a man who worked at the MGM Grand as a valet bellman, and Hot Met waited on hundreds of celebrities. I asked him who the nicest, most normal one was, and he said without a doubt, Carrot Top. Years ago I got to spend summer afternoon with him when he was visiting a local children's hospital, and he was a genuinely nice guy. You could tell that he really enjoyed making those kids happy. I turned on a TV on Vegas only to be presented with Carrot Top in a wedding dress. To this day that image haunts my nightmares. Yeah, he's freaky looking, but my husband and I saw his show in Vegas a few years ago because of a ton of recommendations in a Vegas Facebook group I'm in. I couldn't remember the last time I laughed that hard. We're gonna go see him again in August. Oprah. I know she's a national treasure and all that in the USA, but I live in Ireland and I've watched a lot of clips from her show on the internet which we wouldn't normally see here because she isn't on TV. She comes off as quite bitter and judgmental to me, and I get the vibe that she isn't a very nice person. In fact, quite the opposite. Plus, she uses her brand to lend legitimacy to a whole host of bizarre shit that should never see the light of day. She made Dr. Wasn't his pseudoscience bullshit a thing? But hasn't ever provided a useful platform to an actual scientist. Pass. Tom Cruise. Christian Bale allegedly based his Patrick Bateman, American Psycho, performance on Cruise. Quote from interview with director Mary Harron. It was definitely a process. Bale and I talked a lot, but he was in LA. And I was in New York. We didn't actually meet in person a lot, just talked on the phone. We talked about how Martian-like Patrick Bateman was, how he was looking at the world like somebody from another planet, watching what people did and trying to work out the right way to behave. And then one day he called me and he had been watching Tom Cruise on David Letterman, and he just had this very intense friendliness with nothing behind the eyes, and he was really taken with this energy. In the book, Patrick Bateman idolizes two people, Tom Cruise and Donald Trump. If I recall correctly, there's a scene where he meets Tom Cruise, too. Far and away the most fucking rough book I've ever read. The only book to ever even compare has been Blood Meridian. American Psycho hit me much harder since I feel like I've met a lot of smooth talking, strangely self-absorbed, slightly off men who could fit that mold in real life. But I've never met any scalp hunters or 7 borderline mythical hairless erudites. I forget the comedian, but his story of when Tom Cruise came to his house for the Super Bowl was amazing and almost sad. He was working on a movie and mentioned the Super Bowl party he was throwing, and Tom asked if he could come. The comedian, of course, said yes. The big game comes and Tom shows up with a football that was clearly just purchased and kept bringing up things that were forced. You know what the best thing about having a wife is? The sex. However, amazing. Is this Tom Cruise or Tommy Wiseau? R. Kelly was always creepy to me. I remember hearing the rumors and his demeanor just clicked with it all. I'm actually surprised that it took this long for people to investigate on whether the rumors about him were true or not. He married a 14-year-old girl and wrote a song for her called Age Ain't Nothing But a Number in the 90s. And that should've been the point where a lot of people should've said, okay, that's fucking creepy. He's been creepy basically since he got famous. Star power kept it away for so long. Take this long. He was tried in 2008. The indictment for the case was in 2002 and his lawyers delayed it that long. At the same time, he was indicted in Florida, but there were problems with the warrant, so it was thrown out. He's been widely known to be a sexual predator for 17 years, but it's not an easy case to make when the victims refuse to testify. Bruno Mars. I mean, he's cool and I don't have anything against him. He just seems like a fake celebrity. Not saying he's a fake person, but it feels like he is a celebrity from a fictional TV show like Hannah Montana or something. That's the best way I can describe it. He reminds me of that one politician in Parks and Rec that just stares unblinkingly at the wall all day when he doesn't do speaking gigs. Bobby Newport has never had a real job. I read a great Rolling Stone article about Bruno Mars where he talks about feeling lucky to be in his job and taking it seriously as an entertainer. Basically, he demands perfection and showmanship from everyone involved. If I recall correctly, this was around his turn at the Super Bowl halftime show, because he's the product people are paying to see, so he wants it to be as tight as possible. Changed my mind a bit and made me see him as a hard worker rather than a robot. The guy definitely has a persona and works hard to cultivate that image. Definitely makes sense given his personal life. 5 siblings, and at points his family lived out of cars and abandoned buildings. I think he realizes how fickle show business and life in general is, so he does his best to be as relevant and quality as possible. The ZUCC, Mark Zuckerberg. But for real, that dude low-key creepy. Smoking some meats. There is no fucking way the Zuck is a regular human being. When he dies, we have to cut him open and see what he is. He doesn't look or seem human. I think that's just because he's a stupidly fucking socially awkward person, and money just exacerbated that problem instead of alleviating it. He's just a weirdo and people expect some kind of genius and are pretty let down. You can't sneak up on Zuck. I don't even fucking blink. Same here. I still think he's that angry incel who set up FB to get revenge on women. He just happened to make a fuck ton of money from it, and dollars go a long way towards reducing the perception of creepy. He gives off lizard vibes, but he's definitely not an incel. If I recall correctly, he's married and has been with the same woman since before Facebook, like they met and dated at Harvard. She is a pediatrician now. Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen herself said that she's not a nice person and only does the show because a lot of people will lose work if she quits. I think I read that somewhere on AskReddit about people meeting celebrities and how are they like. Some redditor met Ellen and tells us she wasn't nice at all. At least she's honest. I like parts of her show, but you can totally tell. You can absolutely tell in Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee that she and Seinfeld hate each other. Maybe that's just me. Jared Leto. Basic, pretentious, sociopath vibes. Actually met him once. It was 10-ish years ago. I was working line control for a 30 Seconds to Mars show, and afterward backstage some of the crew had pictures taken with the band. I didn't want to be a jerk, so I just hung back. He noticed, brought me forward, and used my phone to take a pic of us smooshed together. So in my brief interaction he was super nice. His brother Shannon is pretty cool too. Things could have changed, or maybe I was lucky. I met him too. We played first on a stage that 30 Seconds headlines about 6 hours later. He brought us into their dressing room for a meet and greet and then invited us on stage during their last song. He seemed thoughtful. There was a thread a few months ago about celebrities that seem off, and the Jared Leto one got a lot of traction. Quite a few commenters who met him mentioned that he engaged in somewhat pedo behaviors and was just generally a very off person. I was just rereading that thread an hour ago. A lot of people were talking about him being creepy with underage girls. Now, I know it's nothing confirmed, but if that many people have similar stories regarding someone, it does indicate a trend. Of course there's all the shit he did on the set of Suicide Squad, and him getting angry and aggressive at a panel when one person in the crowd calls him out on it. Mark Wahlberg. His actions in his early years speak for themselves and I'm not convinced he's changed significantly. His comments about how he would have gotten the planes on the ground after 9/11 I think are a rare glimpse we are permitted of his actual mindset. Whenever he's in a role where he's portraying someone acting like a reasonable person I find it completely unbelievable. I saw Mark Wahlberg at a grocery store in Los Angeles yesterday. I told him how cool it was to meet him in person, but I didn't want to be a douche and bother him and ask him for photos or anything. He said, "Oh, like you're doing now?" I was taken aback, and all I could say was huh, but he kept cutting me off and going huh, and closing his hand shut in front of my face. I walked away and continued with my shopping, and I heard him chuckle as I walked off. When I came to pay for my stuff up front I saw him trying to walk out the doors with like 15 Milky Ways in his hands without paying. The girl at the counter was very nice about it and professional, and was like, "Sir, you need to pay for those first." At first he kept pretending to be tired and not hear her, but eventually turned back around and brought them to the counter. When she took one of the bars and started scanning it multiple times, he stopped her and told her to scan them each individually to prevent any electrical interference, and then turned around and winked at me. I don't even think that's a word. After she scanned each bar and put them in a bag and started to say the price, he kept interrupting her by yawning really loudly. Love this pasta, haven't seen it in a long time.